After mocking that Gaara was already a corpse, Deidara even slapped Gaara's face. While Kakashi began analyzing the situation, Granny Chiyo looked on meaningfully. In front of Kakashi and the others, Deidara and Sasori started arguing about the handling of the Jinchuriki's body. Deidara, deviating from the original plan, wanted to capture the Nine Tails himself, claiming that art is a fleeting explosion. As a puppeteer, Sasori believed that only what is eternal and unchanging can be called art. This argument enraged Naruto, who threw a giant shuriken at Sasori. Sasori casually deflected Naruto's attack and started to threaten Deidara. Unfazed, Deidara immediately molded the clay into a bird, picked up Gaara, and flew away. Already fired up, Naruto ignored Kakashi's objection and charged forward. Seeing Kakashi following closely behind, Deidara felt a bit troubled, but still told Kakashi that Sasori inside the cave was even stronger than himself. Kakashi, however, believed that Naruto had lost his mind and that he must protect him. Inside the cave, Sakura and Chiyo confronted the elite shinobi, Sasori of the Red Sand. Sasori boasted about his countless kills and his penchant for making puppets out of corpses. Chiyo reassured Sakura not to be afraid, stating that her combat experience was on par with Sasori's since she was the one who taught him puppet technique. Granny Chiyo was the first to attack, using chakra to manipulate kunai and shoot them at Sasori. This attack was not enough to harm him, but it was sufficient for Chiyo to stealthily wrap her chakra threads around Sasori's tail. Sasori then shed his cloak, revealing his puppet, Hiriko. The puppet's attacks were precise and deadly, making it impossible for Sakura to dodge on her own. Thus, Chiyo used her chakra threads to control Sakura. Sakura, having trained under Tsunade, possessed incredible destructive power. With Chiyo's assistance, her strength was significantly boosted. It was evident that Chiyo was effectively puppeteering her. Sasori, unmasking himself, spat out numerous poison needles, all of which Sakura skillfully dodged. Before Sasori could react, Sakura had already closed in. Chiyo used the chakra threads she had previously tied to Sasori's tail to immobilize him. Seizing the opportunity, Sakura delivered a powerful punch that shattered Hiriko's puppet shell. At this moment, Team Guy was also locked in a fierce battle. Additionally, Naruto and Kakashi were relentlessly chasing after Deidara. Returning to the battlefield inside the cave, Chiyo was shocked to see that despite more than 20 years passing, Sasori's appearance hadn't changed in the slightest. Meanwhile, Sasori proudly displayed his most beloved treasure, the third Kazekage's puppet. By revealing information about Orochimaru, he ignited Sakura's hope of finding Sasuke. Before he could dwell on it further, Sasori launched an attack. Chiyo hurriedly maneuvered Sakura to evade, but before she could pull her out, Sasori's puppet released toxin and then ensnared Sakura with rope. Obviously, Sakura's determination to find Sasuke was incredibly strong, inspiring her to come up with a plan to use explosive tags to blast herself out of the poison smoke, partially breaking the poison mist formation. Sakura was already injured by this point. Chiyo then engaged Sasori in a one-on-one battle. Chiyo's puppet was none other than the ones she made of Sasori when he was a child. The speed at which the puppet battle unfolded was remarkable, continuing until their weapons were damaged. Sasori no longer held back, controlling a Kazekage puppet and unleashing the Iron Sand Bloodline Limit, a perfect counter to puppets, infiltrating them with magnetic sand iron, rendering them useless. Chiyo had no choice but to retreat. Sasori then redirected his focus to Sakura. Chiyo had to use her puppet to defend, resulting in her right arm and her puppet being completely filled with sand iron and rendered unusable. In Sasori's childhood, he was not only had a happy family, but also a grandmother who loved him dearly. However, during a mission, his parents were killed by the despicable Leaf's White Fang. Afraid of hurting Sasori, Chiyo concealed the truth about his parents' death and taught him puppetry. Sasori then made puppets of his parents to accompany him, fueled by his constant longing. Over time, Sasori underwent a gradual transformation, leading to his current appearance. Chiyo wasn't confident she could defeat him, so she planned to cover Sakura's escape. However, Sakura stubbornly insisted that Chiyo control her with one hand. Her years of training under Tsunade had greatly boosted her confidence. Sakura then launched a counterattack, demonstrating that sheer strength could overcome any technique. Faced with Sakura's brute force, Sasori showed signs of finding her difficult to deal with. Meanwhile, during the chase, Naruto had completely lost his composure and patience. Kakashi muttered helplessly, wondering if he would have to use that jutsu. Sakura, having inherited Tsunade's strength of 100 seal technique, possessed immense power. She was even able to confront the third Kazekage's Iron Sand directly. Their battle caused the cave to break apart, creating a huge hole. Meanwhile, Guy and his team were entangled with their clone, nearly matching them in both skill and power. Upon hearing the sound of the cave collapsing, Guy became anxious and urgently asked Neji about the situation. With his Byakugan, Neji detected that Sakura was engaged in a fierce battle with Sasori, temporarily stabilizing their forces. Back at the main battlefield, Due to the cave's destruction, Chiyo could no longer assist Sakura in evading attack. However, Sakura's exceptional judgment allowed her to adapt and become familiar with the third Kazekage's fighting style. Chiyo marveled at Sakura's rapid growth, realizing Tsunade had taken in an extraordinary disciple. Exhausted, Sakura recalled her days training with Tsunade, remembering how at first she would close her eyes in fear during exercise, only to be scolded by Tsunade. Tsunade told Sakura that closing her eyes in front of an opponent was as good as suicide. If you couldn't discern your opponent's fighting style, how could you hope to win? If a medic got injured, who would heal the wounded? Everyone had their own techniques to master, and also their weakness. Countless injuries and beatings had accelerated Sakura's growth. She began to analyze Sasori's combat style, and, by observing the movements of his fingers, could predict the puppet's attack direction. Sensing this, Sasori prepared to expend more chakra to deal with Sakura. He unleashed the ultimate technique of the third Kazekage seal, the Iron Sand World method. The dense barrage of sand iron stretched out, even blocking out the sky. It was impossible to evade such a concentrated attack. Even Chiyo's attempts to help Sakura evade were futile. Sakura was struck down, and Chiyo was pinned under the rubble, unable to move. At the start of the battle, Chiyo had advised Sakura to avoid the puppet's attack and only engage in close combat to defeat them. However, there were also some specially prepared poisons in the sand iron. Sasori confidently stated that if Sakura were poisoned, she would only survive for 3 days at most. But he didn't want to wait, and immediately controlled his puppet to finish her off. At the moment the puppet approached, Sakura suddenly rose to her feet, and smashed the third Kazekage's seal puppet with a single punch. We know that in the early stages of Naruto Shippuden, Sasori's strength was comparable to Orochimaru, slightly higher than Deidara, but his performance in the final battle raised doubt. Could Sasori's strength have been overestimated? At the moment when the third Kazekage puppet was destroyed by Sakura, his most powerful technique, the Iron Sand World method, was also passively released. This surprised Sasori greatly. At this time, Chiyo wasn't controlling Sakura, and her poison needle did indeed scratch Sakura's arm. So where did things go wrong? It turns out, when Sakura was making the antidote for Kankuro, she knew her opponent was skilled in poison. She made several doses to carry with her, intending to use them at the most critical moment to relax her guard. However, the antidote only lasted for 3 minutes, so she had to act quickly. But Sakura had also expended a lot of chakra healing Chiyo's wound, and was already exhausted. Meanwhile, Deidara used a large number of smaller, faster explosive clay to directly slow down Kakashi's speed. Naruto, desperate to save his friend, speed up his pursuit without waiting for Kakashi. When Deidara saw Naruto approaching alone, he stopped to prepare for capture, taunting Naruto from time to time, likening him to Gaara, unable to remain calm as a Jinchuriki. Just as Naruto rushed forward, Kakashi appeared to intercept him. Kakashi had quietly used a substitution jutsu to escape the explosion, mocking Deidara and suggesting he should make clay that can distinguish between real and fake targets to avoid bombing innocent people. Deidara appeared disdainful. Since Kakashi had arrived, he had no choice but to give up. At this point, Kakashi began analyzing the situation. Naruto was suited for close combat, but to defeat a long-range opponent, they needed to find a way to close the distance and attack. However, the opponent who infiltrated Tsunagakure and defeated Gaara was evidently cleverer, so long-range ninjutsu was their only option. He instructed Naruto to follow his lead, and Naruto calmed down, listening to his sensei's command. In the sky, Deidara grew impatient. On one hand, he feared his partner's weight. On the other hand, he disliked this style of fighting. So Deidara chose to continue luring his enemies deeper. But by now, Kakashi had closed his left eye and begun to cast his jutsu. Meanwhile, Sakura's final battle was about to begin. Sasori knew that using human puppets was futile, so he removed his clothes, revealing his modified body. It turns out, Sasori had not changed in over 20 years because he had transformed himself into a human puppet. However, there was an unwritten rule in the Naruto world: nakedness leads to death. At this moment, Sakura's antidote had only 2 minutes left, and Sasori had unleashed powerful flames from his hand. In his human puppet state, Sasori had 4 scrolls on his back. After spraying high-temperature flames, the first scroll, like internet data usage, disappeared in no time. The second scroll allowed him to continuously shoot high-pressure water bullets with such force that they could easily cut through rocks and cloud. But long-range attacks evidently couldn't hit Sakura. After exhausting these 2 scrolls, Sasori changed his strategy. He first wounded Sakura with a grappling hook, and then flew blades from his back toward Chiyo, intending to defeat them one by one. At this moment, Sakura's antidote only had 20 seconds left. She endured the pain and grabbed the cable, pulling the axis at the last second and pulling Sasori towards her. With one punch, she shattered the human puppet Sasori. As she sat down, relieved, Sakura said, "It's done." But the good times didn't last, because Sasori's core was in his heart. As long as it wasn't damaged, he was essentially immortal. His body began to reassemble, and since Sakura's antidote had worn off, Chiyo began to duel with Sasori. Because the third Kazekage had been broken, Chiyo could use her mechanical arm. She unleashed the forbidden technique, White Red Secret Technique, the Chikamatsu Collection of 10 Puppet. The founder of puppetry, Monzaemon Chikamatsu. The Chikamatsu collection of 10 puppets, each capable of destroying a city, were released. The ability of a puppeteer is determined by the number of puppets they can control. Since a person only has 10 fingers are the pinnacle of puppeteers, but Sasori had transformed himself into a puppet, linking all chakra threads to his body. The third scroll, Red Secret Technique, performance of 100 puppet, allowed Sasori to control hundreds of puppet. He claimed that he had destroyed a country with this move. Since Sakura's antidote had worn off, Chiyo motioned for Sakura to rest aside, but Sakura insisted on fighting. At this moment, the shadow of the 5th Hokage overlapped with Sakura's. The battle began. Chiyo's puppet quality was obviously higher than before, and their cooperation was more tacit. They could even use space-time ninjutsu together. But with the decrease in the number of puppets, their focus on puppets began to rise, and the situation gradually worsened. Chiyo was also injured by a surprise attack. She motioned for Sakura to come closer, and with the Chikamatsu 10 puppets protecting her, Sakura successfully threw a puppet mechanism, nailing Sasori to the wall. Sasori's puppets immediately lost consciousness, just as they thought Sasori couldn't move anymore. Sasori's core popped out when hit, and his body entered another puppet. Sasori pulled out a knife and attacked Chiyo. Sakura rushed over and blocked the blow with her body. Sasori explained that his 100 puppets operation could easily destroy a country, showing the power comparable to a nuclear bomb. But why, with an absolute numerical advantage, did he still struggle against Chiyo? Could it be that Sasori's puppet mastery was inferior to Chiyo's? Just now, Sasori tried to ambush Chiyo but failed, blocked by Sakura. Chiyo immediately took out the antidote from her hand and injected it into Sakura. Sasori mocked this act of sacrificing oneself to save others, intending to take back blade and attack again. But the blade was firmly held by Sakura, immobilizing him. Sasori had to dismantle his arm, revealing the blade again to launch another attack. At this moment, Chiyo's fingers began to manipulate the puppet. Sasori suddenly flashed back to the image of being hugged by his parents in his childhood. Suddenly, father and mother puppets appeared from both sides and pierced Sasori's core. Purple blood spewed from Sasori's core. Sasori looked incredulously at the puppets on both sides and the Kazekage beneath him. It turns out Chiyo had long noticed that Sasori's core had shifted and had secretly laid this trap. She knew that as the core of chakra manipulation and production, a physical part was needed to support it. Since Sakura's antidote had worn off, Chiyo began to duel with Sasori. At this moment, Sakura had been struck fatally and collapsed, yet Sasori remained alive. He foretold Sakura's inevitable demise. However, Chiyo, in a desperate move, employed the reanimation jutsu to transfer some of her life force to Sakura. Sasori found this jutsu perplexing. It was a technique Chiyo had developed, allowing one to transfer their life force to a puppet or a person. Memories flooded Sasori's mind, but he found them utterly tedious. Sakura, upon hearing this, became furious. She was enraged by Sasori's disregard for life and family. To Sasori, people were merely raw materials for puppetry. Only puppets were eternal. Despite this, Sasori disclosed information about Orochimaru. 10 days later, at the Tenchi Bridge near Konoha, he would rendezvous with the spy embedded alongside Orochimaru. As Sasori's words ceased and his puppet parents fell, his life came to an end. Chiyo, who miraculously survived, felt that it should have been her life that ended. Sasori did not evade the final blow, which he could have easily dodged. Perhaps it was the image of being attacked by his puppet parents that reminded him of a childhood dream. His greatest desire was the embrace of his parents, and he noticed the motion of Chiyo's puppet-controlled fingers. However, he failed to anticipate that his residual humanity would be his undoing. Until his last breath, Sasori had one scroll left unused, which remained an unresolved mystery in the Naruto series. Meanwhile, Kakashi had already gathered the chakra in his left eye, displaying the power of his Mangekyo Sharingan. Although Sasori had been defeated, the imposter that Guy's team battled did not disappear. Neji observed Sakura's victory over her opponent, and Guy concluded that even if the caster died, the technique would remain. Therefore, they had to do their utmost to defeat their own imposters. On Sakura's side, Chiyo's life was now at risk due to her effort to save Sakura. Sakura, weakened and poisoned, was on the brink of death. She wished to hurry back to prepare an antidote, but Chiyo insisted there was still an important task to fulfill. Kakashi's Mangekyo Sharingan was also ready, and Naruto, looking at the new Sharingan, felt a heavy burden. He assured Kakashi that even if they failed, he would rescue Gaara himself. Meanwhile, Guy team was gradually losing ground in his battle. Despite everyone's chakra and stamina being limited, their copies remained unchanged, resembling robots maintaining their initial state. Neji's situation was even worse, as he not only had to fight his clone, but also had to observe Sakura's condition with his Byakugan. Soon, he was sent flying by his imposter's gentle fist, heavily injured. However, the astute Lee noticed a pattern. It seemed the clones perpetually maintained their state when the seals were released and did not tire. At that moment, Lee glimpsed Sakura, who had previously been unable to join the fight, now surpassing her former self. She had defeated members of the Akatsuki, and now stood victorious. Lee finally understood how to defeat the imposters, which is by transcending their pre-sealed selves. Nobody remains stagnant forever. They continuously strive and grow stronger. This philosophy resonated with what Guy imparted during their training session. Guy unleashed a new Konoha Senpu kick, kicking away his clone. Then, Tenten unleashed the Heavenly Chain Disaster, raining countless weapons to pierce through the enemy. Neji also grasped a new technique, the 8 trigrams Mountain Crusher, sending the enemy flying. Finally, the battle concluded. As Lee suggested, experience accumulates, and people grow. The ninja world is such, and so are we. After defeating their own copies, Guy's team hurried towards Kakashi's location. Chiyo, supported by Sakura, continued on their journey, but the poison began to take its toll. Chiyo couldn't even maintain a normal walking pace. Sakura was astonished by Chiyo's unwavering conviction and willpower, which sustained her body and prevented her from fainting. Meanwhile, Kakashi was readying himself for the jutsu. He signaled Naruto to act according to plan and unleash the Mangekyo Sharingan. This marked the first appearance of the Kamui in the series. Time and space around Deidara began to twist into a whirlpool shape, leaving Deidara undoubtedly bewildered. He was perplexed by this new technique, thinking it was too overpowered. Fortunately, Kakashi's chakra reserves were limited, and his mastery of the Mangekyo Sharingan was still lacking, requiring much time to prepare and release the technique. Deidara's art style started to distort under the pressure of the Mangekyo Sharingan. Naruto, witnessing this, was equally shocked by the mysterious ninjutsu. After 2 episodes of charging, Kakashi finally completed the technique, but it missed its mark, only managing to sever one of Deidara's arm. Kakashi sighed, admitting his lack of proficiency, and hastily prepared for a second attack. This frightened Deidara, who no longer dared to be careless. He changed direction and headed into the dense forest, as staying in the air made him an easy target. However, his escape was short-lived. Just as he shook off Kakashi, Naruto's Rasengan emerged from the trees, forcing Deidara to flee again. Naruto seized the opportunity to rescue Gaara. Meanwhile, Sakura and Chiyo noticed the aftermath of Deidara's explosion, recognizing it as the scene of Kakashi's battle. Although Gaara was saved, the Jinchuriki would die if the tailed beast been removed. With both hands lost and unable to perform hand seals, Deidara faced the Sharingan, excluding Itachi's, for the first time, making him uneasy. Suddenly, Naruto burst in, using shadow clones to capture Deidara from a distance. Fueled by anger, Naruto relentlessly pummeled Deidara's face, but the one he pinned down was only a clay clone. Enraged and out of control, Naruto's Nine Tails chakra cloak enveloped him, turning him into a terrifying sight. Even from a distance, Deidara felt the horror emanating from Naruto, as his chakra levels rivaled those of tailed beasts. Soon, the chakra cloak manifested into a tail, unleashing tremendous destructive power. It was imperative to stop Naruto before he could cause further harm. Kakashi recalled Jiraiya's advice to intervene before Naruto manifested more tails, warning of dire consequences if the 9 tails fully materialized.